Hello there, good people. What is up? Welcome. My name is Marco and I'm a full stack developer. This is the second episode in the series where I build an Instagram clone. Now, in episode number 1 last week, I mainly focused on the HTML and the CSS for the sign up and the login page. If you haven't seen it, just go and check it out. This time, I'm going to focus primarily on the validation of the forms, the animation of the page, and I will mainly use JavaScript. And also, there's going to be some debugging. You'll see. Now, this episode is going to be packed, so let's jump into it. Before I can start, if you want to help this channel, well then don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment down below. Let me know what your requests are or if you have any question. I'm always happy to read and answer comments. And also I'm totally available to adjust these kind of videos to your likings. And also, if you really enjoy this content, well then leave a like and share. Okay, now enough talking. Let's start coding. Okay, so this is where we left last time. This is the HTML. As you can see now, this is the page and I just got the login because it's the only active div. Now, if you see that there's no animation, the form doesn't get validated. And if I click here, that nothing happens. So let's address what we want to do first. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to do. The first is basically give to this button right here the ability to change the view, so from login to sign up. And this is probably the easiest, the simplest one, so I'm gonna do that first. And then what I want to do is, of course, validate the form when I press the login button or the sign up button, and that would basically mean showing errors if there are some. So we can break it down into 3 parts. The first is showing login and sign up. The second is validating the form, and the third is displaying the message. So let's do that. First thing first, remember to link your JavaScript into the HTML, just like this. And now I can, okay, like this. Let's put it side by side, but I want my user here. Okay, now I have on my right the HTML and on the left I got my JavaScript. So the first thing I want to do is, as I said, give an action to this span. It's not really a button, it's a span, but basically when I click it, I want to change the view. Now this is very simple because if you notice here, the login form has a class of active. And if I show you the CSS and I go down here, you'll see that the login form and the sign up form have a display of none, but when you add a class of active, it's going to be a display of block. So it's basically just adding a class. So the first thing I want to do is to select these 2 divs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it container because basically this is not the actual form, but it's where the form is contained. And I gave it a class, so I'm going to use a query selector. So basically, I'm selecting this div, login form. Let's close this so that you can see it better. Okay, login form. And I'm going to duplicate down here, but with the sign up. And this, of course, I'm going to name it sign up container. Okay, now I'm going to do something quite particular, and that is I'm going to put a conditional. You can choose one or the other. This basically means, since this is going to be a multi-page application, when I come in here and I basically link the JavaScript is going to select this too. But if I'm not in the login page or the sign up page, these divs will not exist. So everything that I do with this will basically give me an error. And if I have an error right here, where I got my login logic, for instance, all the JavaScript, all the code underneath it will not be executed because there's going to be an error. So if I put the logic for the next page, like beside this, or like underneath, that logic will not be executed. So my second page will not have any JavaScript, because the browser will not find this login container, basically this div, and it's going to be undefined, and that will be, a mess. But like this, I know that this element would be on this page. So only if this is not undefined, I want to deploy the logic that I'm going to write right here. Like this, I can give a scope to all the variables that I'm going to create so that I don't have any memory going outside of this scope. This is one way you can do it. I like to do it this way. Another way you can do it is basically create different JavaScript files for different pages. I think this is a bit more simple. So the first thing I want to do is to basically add an event listener to this span. And if you can see, this has an ID, so I can select them, select redirect buttons. And the first one is redirect login. No, it's sign up. And this is going to be a document .getElement by ID. And this time I can do it because I have an ID. It's going to be redirect sign up. Okay. Again, basically the same thing for the login, because I have here redirect login, but I'm gonna call it redirect login. Okay, now I have to, let's call it button, just to show that I have an action behind it. I can have an action behind it. Now I want to add an event listener to the buttons. And to do that, it's very easy. I'm gonna redirect sign up button, add event listener, and I'm gonna listen for a click. So basically when I click on it, I'm gonna have access to the event. And right here, I'm just gonna say, this is the redirect sign up. So I'm just gonna say redirect, or even better, show sign up. And this is going to be a function that we're gonna write in a bit. This is going to be the redirect login, so I need to show the login form. Beautiful. Okay, I think everything is correct. Oh, this is button. Yeah, beautiful. Now I need to create these two functions, but these are the functions that are very simple, and I'm gonna call it helper show functions. Now, the first one is the show sign up. And what do I want to do? Well, if I want to show the sign up, I want to hide the login and show the sign up. And to show it, I just need to add a class of active. So when I come in here, I want to grab the login form, the div that I've just selected right here, so the login container, and I'm going to remove the active class. So then I'm going to hide it. So this basically hides the login form, and I can actually copy paste this down here, but instead of the login container, now I have my sign up container. And instead of removing, I'm going to add the active class. This logic will be exactly the same in the show login function. But let's do this upside down. I'm gonna hide the sign up, and I'm gonna show the login. Just like this, I should be able to toggle between the two. And as you can see, it works. So every time I push this account button, now I have, you don't have an account, so you want to sign up. Well, select this, and I can basically see the sign up. I already have an account. Well, then I can log in. Beautiful. Now this works. Another thing that is left to do now is validating the forms. This is actually the most, I think, the funniest part. Okay, so let's do like this. Perfect. Now let's think about validating the forms. And this validation will be the front-end validation. It's not going to be the API validation, of course, because on the backend I will provide another type of validation, and it's always neat and best practice to provide both type of validation, so one on the front end and one on the back end. So what I want to do now is select the actual forms, because this is the container, but I want the form. So the login form, it's an ID, so I can just const, let's call it login form, document dot get element by ID. I'm gonna copy paste this. This is basically identical, but it's the sign up. This is the neat thing about keeping things consistent. You don't have to change too many things when you do this type of stuff. Okay, now I have the single forms. Now I want to do is to add event listeners to them. The first one is the login form. I'm gonna add an event listener, but this time it's gonna be of submit. So every time I push the button to submit the form, I'm gonna have access to this. And basically, this is where I deploy the entire logic for login. So let's say API call and validation. Okay. For now, what I want to do is, of course, prevent default so that the page doesn't refresh every time I click it. And let's see if the event gets triggered correctly. So this is going to be logging in. I'm going to do the exact same, but for the sign up form. This is going to be the sign up form. And instead of this, I'm going to say signing up. Is that spelled correctly? Yeah. Just like this. Okay. Now if I come here and I inspect this so that I have access to my console and I click it, I can see that the form is triggering the event from the submit. The page is not refreshing and I'm just getting this logging in. And if I do this on the sign up and signing up, this works. Now, if you care about these two warnings, they basically saying that there are two IDs, identical IDs, and this is kind of deprecated. And as you can see, I got the password in here that belongs to the login and the password that belongs to the sign up. And the same goes for the username. Now, if you want to get rid of these two warnings, it's very easy. You just need to go to the HTML right here, and where I got my input with the ID of username. If I'm in the login, I just put login username and login password. And in here, I got my sign up username and the sign up password, like this. And if you want to see it, the warning just disappears. Now, it doesn't create any problem because I'm gonna get each form with JavaScript, so I'm not gonna grab each individual input, so I don't have to select them by ID. But if you don't want that warning, you can just change this right here. Okay, now that I've set this. Okay, now let's start from validating the login. So when I come in here, I have access to the form data. So I'm gonna just say login form data, and this is equal to new form data, and I pass into this the login form. And like this, I can select whatever is inside the login form data. And as you can see right here, I just have in the login, I just have the sign up, the username, which is this, and the password. So the username is going to be the login form data dot get to get that particular input. And right here, I want to get the password, of course. Now, these two elements, these two objects will basically compose the message that I'm going to send, the request that I'm going to send to my API. But for now, they will just be validated. So what I want to do is if validate login, and I'm going to pass the object with the username and password. Okay, if this is true, I can console log something just for now and say logged in. But in this case, this would basically make the request. So if everything is correct on the front end, I'm just gonna make the request. Okay, so this logic should suffice for now. One thing I want to do is to basically select something, because now we don't have it. And it's the node, let's call it like this, just to be more specific, error node. So this is I need to select this login error message, and I'm gonna select it outside. Let's see, I'm validating the form. I can see right here, error handling message. Now I can say the login error. It's document dot. This is a class, so query selector, and the class is login error message. And inside here, instead of login, it's gonna be sign up. And this is the sign up error. Okay, the reason why I do this would be clear in a bit. So basically now I'm selecting this div with the error and this div. So in the login, of course, I want the first one. So now the error node, actually, error message node. So basically the node that will host the message. It's this one with the class of message. So what I can do is selectively select, this div inside of this other div. And since I've selected right here, I've already have it right here, the login error. Instead of doing a document.query selector, I'm gonna say a login error.query selector. So this query selector will work only inside of this particular div. And I'm gonna look for a class of message. So this is my error message node. Okay, this is going to be important because in this validate login, I also want to pass in, and I can do it right here. I want to pass in the node, and you'll see why. Now I want to write this function. In this function, we can write it right here. Okay, validation forms helper functions. Okay, so this we're gonna call it validate login, and this is going to take the data as an object and of course the node. And right now, what I want to do is, what I like to do in this validating functions is to do everything. So return a boolean, so true or false if the form is valid, but also to basically compose the error message so that I don't have to take care somewhere else, because it's a basic validation. The first thing I want to do is validate the username. And how can I do that? Well, I got my data, and there must be a username key. So this is going to be false if there isn't. It's going to be undefined, which can be evaluated as false. But I also want that the data.username.trim, so basically removing all the empty spaces, is different from an empty string. So the username must be like a valid username, okay? Another thing that I want to do is set a password. Validate the password. So there must be a password. And now in here you can put all the validation for the password that you want. You might want like lower cases, upper cases, symbols, and you'd need a regular expression just to match that pattern. But in this case, I'm not gonna bother doing that. What I'm gonna do instead, I'm just gonna provide a very single validation. So basically the length of the password, when I trim it, so I remove all the white spaces, must be greater than 6. This is the only constraint that I put on the password. It's very simple. You can put 8, you can put 10, you can put whatever. Right now, these two will be booleans, like this is gonna be either true or false. So now here I can access them like this. So if username, or better, if not username. So if there is some error with this, it means that something here failed. It's either empty or there isn't. I'm gonna use a function, let's say compose error message, and the error message will take a message, so let's say invalid username, and it's gonna take a node to display the message, basically. Okay, and you're gonna see why I'm using compose error message. I'm gonna do it in a bit. The same goes for the password. Okay, so if not password, I'm gonna compose error message, and it's an invalid password. I'm gonna put it inside that node. Okay, right here, what I can do now is basically say I'm gonna return a boolean. So I'm gonna use a username and password. Okay, so if these both are true, it means that they are valid, and so I'm gonna return true. And this is fundamental for this piece right here, because if this is not true, we'll basically exit. We'll just return. I can just put here return. Now, there is something more that I want to do. First of all, I haven't written this function, but most importantly, I'm gonna have a message like this, which is like an empty string for now. And instead of doing this, well, maybe I can just cut and paste. I'm gonna do something like this, and you'll see why. Inside here, I'm gonna have a message equal invalid password. Okay, and this is gonna take the message. Now, if I go here and the message is different from an empty string, so how I initialized it, then I want to display the error message. And the display error message just need a node, let's say. And to select that node, it would be this div. I want to show this div, the login error message or the sign up error message. And to show it, I just need to add a class of show. So this display error message function will take care of that. But now if I select this node and that's it, it's gonna address this node, the message. I don't want that. I want to address this. And since this is a parent and it's a div, I can select it like this. The closest, not like this. Node.closest, node. Closest is really that difficult. Closest, okay. And I want the closest div. So it's gonna select the parent right here, okay. And it's gonna display the error message. Okay, now we have to create this compose error message and display error message. And we can do it like here. Okay, these are also alpha function. So I'm gonna say compose error message. And this takes the data. No, this takes the message and the node. And at the end, display error message. This just take the node. Now what I'm gonna do here is very simple. I'm just gonna add a class list of show. Because if you take a look at the style.css and I go on to the error message, you're gonna see that the error message by itself has a display of none. But if you add a class of show, it's going to be a display of flex. So you're going to see it. The logic works exactly in the same way as the showing and hiding of the login form. This is done. Now I want to do this. And I want to compose the error message. What I want to do is to create, let's call it a message div. Or not a div, but I'm going to create an element. Doesn't like this, it's create element, and I'm gonna create a paragraph. Okay, now that I have this new element, I can put inside whatever I want, and I'm gonna say that the text content is equal to the message. Okay, So basically I'm creating a p tag, a paragraph that is going inside this span. It's gonna carry this message. I have to append it to the node because I'm appending to this thing right here. So append child, and I'm gonna append message. Okay, so this is basically my compose error message. Now, why am I doing like something like this, composing and then displaying? Because you'll see that in the sign up form, there can be multiple errors. So I have to be able to show them one by one. And so I want to compose the error message. Basically, if there is the username is not valid and the email as well, I want to show them both. So I'm going to compose it. And when I'm done with the entire validation, if there is any message, I'm going to display it. Okay, so right now, everything should be fine. Let's take a look at the console. If I do this now, you can see that I have the invalid credentials, and this is an error. Well, it's not an error, but you see that I composed the entire error message. Now this is a bit small, and we can do this very quickly with the font size. Yeah, let's put 1 rem. Okay, it's gonna be 1 rem. Yeah, okay, that's better. Ooh. Okay, now the invalid credential comes from this because I already have this. So what's the problem here? And if I do this again, you'll see that it's gonna add it. And why is it doing this? Because every time I am validating the form, I'm not wiping out whatever is in this div, is in this node. But since I have the node right here, error message node, every time I submit function, I can say that the error message node.inner.html is equal to a blank string. So basically it's gonna empty it out. There's not gonna be anything inside it. And if I do that, now I log in and I got this. There is no invalid credentials anymore. And if I do it again, it will show the same thing. But if I do a username, like name, now the name is valid. And so I just got invalid password. One last thing on this error message is basically to add an event to this span right here to close it. So let's see what that is called. It's called close error message. So it's very simple. I can, like here, I can select them, close error message btns, and I'm gonna document query selector all. This time I have to query selector all of them because I got 2 in this case, and they got the same name. This is not a problem, and you'll see why. Now this will return something like an array, but it's called an HTML collection, but it works, it's an iterable. So what I can do is basically come in here, and for each I will have access to the button, let's call it. Where's the error? Yeah. And to each button, I want to add an event listener. And I want to listen for a click. In the click, it's going to trigger the event. And the event basically is going to be, if I now address the event.target, it's going to address this span because this is the target where I clicked. So what I can say is event.target.closest div. This is going to look for the parent element, which is this error message. I'm just going to remove the class of show. So then I'm going to hide it. Okay, and this should work just fine. We could have put this inside a function, but that's fine. If I now do this and I do this, you see that it disappears. If I now do name, login, invalid password, okay, yeah, fine. Beautiful, now it works. Now comes a bit harder part of the login because there is a lot more validation right here, okay? But we're gonna do that in an instant. Okay, now the logic for validating the sign up form is basically the same. So here I'm gonna copy this entire thing. Well, let's do something like this. Now I have new form data, and I can say form data. This is new form data. This time, in this case, I'm gonna pass the sign up form. So I have the username, and it's sign up form data.get. It's called username. And I have the email. I'm basically following this form, username, email, then I got a password. This is going to be a password. And then I have a confirm password, like just like here. And as usual, email, this is going to be password. This is going to be a confirm password. Beautiful. Now, following this logic, I need to select the node for the error. So error message node is equal to, this time I'm going to have the sign up error, which is right here. And I'm gonna query selector the message. All right. And of course, as before, I need to wipe it out every time I submit the form, so that I don't have any cluttering of messages inside the div. Now, what I want to do is exactly the same. In this case, it's going to be validate sign up. It's going to take the username, the email, the password, and also the confirm password. And as second argument, it's going to take the error message node. It's not very visible right here. Let's do it like this. Okay. So basically, I'm passing an object with these keys and values. As the second argument, I'm going to pass the node. And if this is true, returns true, well then, again, API call to sign up user. So I can just console log in this case. Signed up. Good job. Good job, pal. If not in returns, well, I just return. And I can just do this because if you noticed, I am taking care of the displaying, of the composing of the error message and the displaying in this function all at once. So I don't have to add kind of unnecessary logic inside here. Now what I need to do is to create a new validate function, which in this case is going to be basically the same, but this is to validate sign up. So as I said, I need a username. So this must be in here, and the username dot trim, so removing the white space, must be different from an empty string. Now the email is a bit different because the email needs to have a pattern. First of all, there must be an email. Second, data.email.must match. And in here, I can use a regular expression. If you see, VS Code is showing me. And now, how do I compose this regular expression? Well, let's think about it. I'm going to use the start with. Then I'm going to set it a bunch of characters. And I want basically all the characters, including digits, but not symbols. And I can also have a dot. So if you have like your name dot surname, that is valid. And I need to escape it. This is why I use the / at the beginning. Now this pattern can be one or more than one. Then fundamental, I need an @ symbol. And after that, I can just select a bunch of characters like this. I can have, again, numbers or digits and even dashes like this, once or more, which is the plus. It can be followed by a dot, like here, like this. And this pattern can be followed by, again, any like digit or something, and even dashes. I think sometimes it counts. 1 or plus. Now this is like this, yeah. And we put a flag of I for case insensitive, so uppercase, lowercase. This should already be included in the dash, in this, basically in this set of characters, but just to be safe. So my email must match this pattern. Then I have my password, which again is data.password, so it must be there, and data.password.trim, removing the white space, .length must be greater than 6. And that's it. The confirm password doesn't really have it's not really important now, but it's useful for matching the two passwords. Again, in this password you can put the rules you want. Just don't forget to put the same rules in the validate sign up as you do in the validate login. They must not be different. Now that I have these two booleans, I can follow the logic of this. So I basically initialize a message, an empty string, and I basically do the same thing here. So if not username, I'm gonna compose the message. And this is why the compose message is useful. And I'm gonna put it the message and the node that it's passed onto it. And the message in this case is going to be invalid username. Again, if not email, you can say that the message is equal to invalid email. And just do compose error message and node. This logic basically repeats itself. The only thing that doesn't repeat itself is the last one, and you'll see why. So here I want the password, so if not password, I can say invalid password. Now, the last one doesn't have to check any of the things. It just have to check that two passwords are the same. So I can select password matches, and I can put password and confirm, and let's do it like this. Data.password and data.confirm password. So if they don't match, of course, I'm gonna say the message is gonna be passwords don't match. I'm gonna compose the message, and of course, what I'm gonna do here, if message is different from an empty string, it means that I got some errors. I'm gonna display the messages, and just I need the node dot class dot classes dot closest, and I'm gonna basically do the same thing. This logic is exactly the same as right here. If I don't have any error if I have some error message, I'm just gonna return false because something went wrong. In any other case, I just return true. Okay. So now let's check again in my validate sign up. I am sending the correct node and sending it this. And if everything goes according to plan, I should be signed up. If it doesn't, I should get the errors. Let's check this out. Now I'm in the login. I put a valid name and a valid password like this. I should be invalid password because it's not longer than 6. This is definitely longer than 6. Okay. Okay, let's do a little bit of debugging right here. So the login, I'm gonna console log. Maybe I didn't call it password. if I put a password like this and a name, what? Invalid password. Why is that the case? Let's see on the validate password right here. Length. You know what? Let's try this. So it must be different from an empty string, and then data.password.length. So basically I am evaluating the two things in different ways. Let's see if still more than 6. Still gives me invalid password. Why? Maybe because I'm not passing the password. Let's see in console log the data right here. Okay, so right here I'm just gonna take a look at what I am passing into the validate function. Name and more than 6. The password is like this, but it gives me more than 6. Oh, maybe, oh, fuck. Man, it's a spelling mistake. It was HT, it's TH. Horrible. You see? Okay, now let's try it again. Password. Yeah, logged in. Okay, now it's valid. But if it's shorter than 6, it should give me an invalid password. Okay, beautiful. The login works. The problem was just the HT at the end of the length. It was lang HT instead of TH. Wow. So now I don't need this console log anymore. And now we're gonna try it in the sign up. Let's see if I do this. Password matches is not defined, of course. What an idiot. Because I don't have this function. I need to define it. Of course, and I'm gonna define it, I don't know, somewhere right here. It's gonna be a very simple function. Password matches, password, and confirm. And what I'm gonna do is return password is equal to confirm, just like this. So if I now go to the sign up, I should have invalid username, invalid email, and invalid password. Beautiful. Now let's put the name. Let's put the email at mail.com. Let's put a password, but I'm not gonna put a confirm password. Passwords don't match. Beautiful. Oh, I like these things, man. Let's say I got a short password, but the password matches. Invalid password. Let's put an invalid email like this. Oh, this is HTML enforced, so that's beautiful. But if I put this shouldn't be considered invalid email because I don't have the .com. Nice, nice. I think everything works. So we got the showing and hiding. We got the validation, valid password, and we also got this. Beautiful. Everything is working correctly. Very, very nice. So again, just to summarize the thing, what I'm going to do what I'm doing on the forms is basically passing them through this validate login and validate sign up. And this function takes care of basically composing the error and displaying if there is something wrong. Of course, this validation is valid only on the front end. But right here, when I make the request, I'm going to have a response from the API, and the API might send an error message. So for example, if I send invalid login credentials, so the username doesn't exist, I will make use of that compose error function right here and the display error. But that kind of validation will happen once I create the API, I create the server-side logic behind this application. So for now, this works correctly. It's absolutely amazing. If I select this, it tells me the error message. Now this is working fine. And next week, I'm going to create the main dashboard. So where you can access once you logged in or signed up. That is definitely going to be the next episode focus. So for now, it is all. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you find this useful. Again, don't forget to leave a like and share if you enjoyed this content. And again, stay tuned for more. And bye-bye.